This is the F77 Mark II, and in case you're wondering, yes, it does look exactly the same as it currently is. And in fact, I can also tell you that there are no mechanical changes on this motorcycle whatsoever. But we're still here giving you a video, and that means some things would have changed. And the reason we're giving you this video is it tells a very interesting story, partly about how ultraviolet functions and partly about how cool electric vehicles can be. So what they've done here is that they have found a way to increase the performance of this motorcycle without making any physical changes to it. It sounds very easy, but it's a really complicated process. And the way this whole thing came up is because Ultraviolette is now selling its bike in 10 different European cities. They started getting feedback from Europe about how customers there were riding their bikes. And it's really quite different to India because the speeds are so much higher and the demand for performance comes at a higher speed. So they're sitting on the autobahn, they want to make an overtake at 100, 120, 130, and this kind of behavior may go on for 45 minutes to an hour of flat out riding. And that's where Ultraviolette realized that they were getting feedback about performance duration and things like that, and they immediately got to work. So for Europe, they've been creating certain patches and updates to improve that performance. And now they have culminated all of those updates and brought them out in a package that is now on the bikes in India. The way they've done this is all about addressing heat and heat management. Now, EVs are really complicated things, and every system in here is talking to another system, and they're all correlated, and currents and temperatures all make up a difference, not just in its own system, but in systems further down the line. So you've got the motor controller, the battery pack, the battery control unit, the vehicle control unit, and everything has to go in unison. The thing with EVs is that they don't give you the maximum performance that you could get from that motor and that battery pack. They give you the maximum performance that the manufacturer thinks is capable of coming out of that battery pack at a sustainable level. So we don't really get the top of what is possible. And the way those limits are set is that the component supplier for, let's say, the electric motor or whatever other component tells the manufacturer that this is where you should be setting the upper limit, and then the manufacturer works around that. But certain things are unknown. For example, we've learned today that within the electric motor, they have a temperature sensor for the stator, but they don't know what the rotor temperature is because that's a rotating component and you can't put a sensor in there. So Ultraviolette has done a whole bunch of testing and advanced calculations to estimate what is the temperature within the rotor, but not just the peak temperature, also how fast it goes up and how quickly it can come down. And again, every component and every system does this differently. I am trying to put this across to you as simply as possible, and Ultraviolette gave us some very detailed explanations. To their credit, they try to make it simple to us as well. But these are really complicated vehicles, and the fun of it is that they can be evolved as they age. So you can own one of these bikes, it can be 2 or 3 years old, and you get an over-the-air update and suddenly you've got more performance, and that's exactly what's happening here. Now, like I said, motor is the same, battery pack is the same, so the peak power figure, peak torque figure, peak range is all unchanged. The difference is in the riding experience, and what they've done is they've been able to unleash a noticeable amount of more response when you open the throttle. And literally riding out of the pit lane, I could feel that the updated bike felt more urgent. It was almost startlingly reactive. The F77 has always had a slightly dull initial throttle response and then it comes on. This thing reacts faster, and anyone who is familiar with an Ultraviolette F77 will notice a clear difference. The company hasn't released any clear metrics of what these improvements actually are, but they do tell us that this update has basically unlocked more available torque that arrives sooner when the rider asks for it, and that the torque will be consistently available for a longer period. We are riding at the Velocity go-kart circuit around here. It's a really nice layout, big, fast and flowing. Unfortunately, a lot of the tarmac is coming off in some of the corners, so the riding lines were dictated around avoiding those tarmac patches. But the F77 felt noticeably quicker around a lap because every time you exit a corner, it feels like the bike is pulling you out faster. Interestingly, I didn't really notice much of a difference in the top speed. So at the end of the straight, on the original bike which we rode first, we did a few laps on the current F77 Mark II, and I was seeing a top speed of 103 to 104 kilometers now. And on the updated bike, which we did a few more laps on, it was about 105, maybe 106. So it's not a world of a difference, but it feels noticeably faster. Just from the feeling, I would tell you that this bike maybe is 1 second quicker from 0 to 100, but in reality, it's more like 0.3 seconds, 0.4 seconds is what Ultraviolette tells us. So what you're effectively getting is a bike that feels faster and is more engaging to ride But amazingly, because the company tells us that this is all about thermal optimization, they're not noticing a big drop in the range. In fact, they say if you ride with range in mind, ride more gently, you will get the same range that you would get out of the F77 Mark II. In fact, a few engineers have said that even if you ride more aggressively, the range should not change. But I don't know. I feel like if you're getting more response on the bike, you are accelerating a little harder, the range should drop a little bit. They say it doesn't. We'll have to get the bike back to Mumbai, properly tested to let you know about that. But that is what you get here today. It's a really interesting story about how these things are so different to internal combustion vehicles. And in a way, it is a little intimidating for people who are used to internal combustion engines because it's a very advanced technology and you really need to have a deep understanding of electronics to figure out how these things truly work. But in another way, this is the future. These vehicles can be updated through the course of their life. They can be improved, and that is really quite cool. And of course, keeping with tradition, Ultraviolette is making sure that all of its existing customers will get an update to their motorcycles and they will all be able to perform like this. It's not an easy thing to do because they have to re-homologate the bike. There's time involved in that, money involved in that, but the company makes sure that everyone benefits. So that's pretty much the sum of today's story. It's not a traditional review as such. This bike really hasn't changed in the way it rides. It is a big thing. It's over 200 kilos. You feel the weight, but it's also quick. It's very different to a petrol vehicle. Constant, immediate surge. It's good fun to ride. It's something different. If you want to know how the F77 rides, we've got a full review that we did a little while earlier, so you can check that out. But this is a story of cool technology, and I hope you found it interesting.